All right, so Francis Ngannou and Renan Ferreira are about to take center stage for the PFL, and I think their first pay-per-view of the year. It is DAZN, ESPN Plus, Battle of the Titans, Brace for Impact, Riyadh season, PF. There's so much stuff going on with this card, but the main thing is the main thing. Can Francis Ngannou, in his return to MMA, claim the heavyweight belt for PFL after never really losing it in the UFC? Some may call him the lineal heavyweight champion because he never lost that belt, but Renan Ferreira is an absolute monster. I mean, let's just be honest. This guy's like 6'7", 6'8", 250 plus pounds. He just did a gainer on screen. If you don't know what that is, that's a backflip running forward. Freak of an athlete, and he's a wild card. He's a wild man. He is one of the guys that PFL is propping up as their next big fighter. Can Francis slay him? A lot of people thinking this could be upset city for Ferreira, but I don't know. We're about to find out. Heavyweight main event, PFL super fight, super big heavyweight. Lay it on the table, whatever the phrase was they used. Reaction time, let's go. Renan Ferreira looks like an absolute giant. This thing is billed as the Battle of the Giants. He looks massive compared to Francis. He's plus like 200 or 300 to stop Francis, so he's a massive dog, but I think this is realistic. We'll see what happens. He's a little wild, and he has been beat by lesser opponents. Ferreira's trying to throw big, so is Francis. Both guys are trying to throw just nasty leather right now, both looking to counter each other. Francis wants to go jab right hand off the low kick. Ferreira looking for his right hand. Francis goes in on a single and puts him down. Very nice. Francis Ngannou with the big takedown. This is what he did to Ciryl Gane. Obviously, he had the leg issue, and I think he had a torn ACL in his knee, but Francis was able to get Gane to the ground in his last fight in the UFC and won that fight that way. Oh my God. I have to think, you know, I don't know too much about Renan's background, but I have to think, being Brazilian, you obviously have some jiu-jitsu. Francis gets out, very nicely done, very calm. Francis is sitting in half guard here, and I think he's pretty comfortable keeping it here. I think he knows that Ferreira's a wild man on the feet. And both of them, you know, to be fair, both of them are. Francis willing to hold half guard here and try to work his ground and pound. Oh, he's throwing some shots here from the top. Francis is unloading some stuff here in half guard. Ferreira tries to sprawl and get up, and now Francis essentially takes the back while sitting kind of on the canvas, half on the cage, throwing those clubbing shots, man. We know Francis has had heavy hands from day one, and he's hurting Ferreira, and he's gonna go out. Ferreira's getting hit with some big shots, and he's out. Oh my goodness! Francis Ngannou knocks Renan Ferreira out with ground and pound from the back mount position in round number 1. He's out cold. And again, you looked at this fight and you thought, how was Francis going to come back after getting obliterated in his boxing match with Anthony Joshua? And then obviously the big elephant in the room, and the thing that I think is going through Francis's mind right now is he looks like he's getting a little emotional. Francis lost his son this year. His son Kobe had it tattooed on his arm at the weigh-in, and you can see the emotions pouring out of Francis. Everything that you know he's worked for, all the emotions that went into this camp and just in his life are coming to fruition right here. So you have to feel good for Francis getting the win, but you know something weighing heavy on his heart is always tough to deal with. I don't know, you know, it's heartfelt. It's emotional for Francis. It's his moment. He did it. It was a pretty dominant performance. There was not really any shots he took on the feet. Dove in off the right hand, jab right hand, into the grappling, gets Ferreira to the ground, does a good job of avoiding a slick triangle attempt from Ferreira off of his back, was able to avoid that, then started the ground and pound, started to work his way up Ferreira's body to then get Ferreira to turn and post on his elbows and knees. Francis took his back and started raining left hands in over the top, bang, bang. Ground and pound, and he hit so hard. He didn't even need his legs. He was just doing it from ground and pound, again, back mount, but he was just destroying him with left hand after left hand like a sledgehammer, and finally, Ferreira went limp. Out cold, and Francis Ngannou wins your PFL heavyweight championship. And here's the thing, what we just saw from Francis Ngannou was so dominant, and you kind of didn't think anything else was going to happen outside of the potential knockout from Renan Ferreira, which was definitely there and available had the fight, you know, stayed on the feet, or you just never know what would happen. But Francis proved once again that he is dominant at the heavyweight division in MMA. Like, again, it's maybe not the competition that he would have seen in the UFC, but I want to see Francis Ngannou versus I'm gonna say it again. Jon Jones, man. Francis and Jon Jones. Francis and Aspinall. Francis and just those guys. That's what needs to happen. That's not what's gonna happen because, again, they're two different companies, PFL, UFC. They're not gonna do a co-fight promotion. They're not gonna have that happen. But what you have to say about Francis Ngannou is that he is one of, if not the greatest stories in the history of maybe sports, actually, when you think about it. Because it is quite clearly evident that Francis will overcome pretty much every obstacle. Again, you know, the boxing Anthony Joshua thing aside, he has done the unbelievable, the unthinkable for pretty much all of his career. A guy that was digging sand mines to risk his life, not once, not twice, multiple times to try to get out of Africa and better his life. Gets to France, living on the streets, eating whatever, finds a way into an MMA gym, gets himself started in combat sports, goes from there to being heavyweight champion in the UFC. Obviously, he did not feel valued by the UFC. Bet on himself, goes to PFL, goes to pro boxing. I think still arguably beats Tyson Fury in his first ever boxing match, then obviously loses to Anthony Joshua, gets paid, and then just decides, again, in the midst of one of the worst things that can happen, and I don't want to keep harping on it, but the loss of a family member, and more so over the loss of a son, and still finds the motivation, finds the discipline, finds the why to come back. Yes, in the PFL. Yes, versus Renan Ferreira, who is dangerous, was big, was scary, on the feet, could really cause some problems, but showed to not be the level of Francis in any way, shape, or form. And he goes and absolutely obliterates PFL's heavyweight champion. This man has still not lost a heavyweight championship fight since he won the one in the UFC. And yes, the UFC has the more stiff competition. It's not close, really. So those are the fights I would want to see. But for now, what I will say is congrats to Francis Ngannou. What a beast and what a story. One of, if not, the greatest heavyweight combat sports athletes we've ever seen. What happens next for him? I mean, they've talked about boxing again. I've told you, I want to see Francis and Jon Jones. I want to see Francis and Tom Aspinall. That's probably not ever going to happen. But that's why I don't have those answers. So guess we'll find out.